All right, looks like we're up and running here. Hey everybody, it's Jason from Ronin Bodyboards. Doing another Boog Chat. So I know it's been a little while since I've done one, but trying to get back into the swing of things here. Yeah, hopefully some people start showing up. Looks like there was one person here, but already got kind of built out. So hopefully we get a few people showing up, so I'm not just talking to myself. Man, it's been a last month or so. I've been doing a little bit of construction work on the side, not really focused on boards about for like the past month. I've been working a little bit here and there on the few, but I got sucked into a pretty good construction project for one of my neighbors, so I was cranking on that for a couple weeks. Also, we're pretty much through the storms finally, so I'm starting to get more sessions again out in the water, which, gosh, first part of this year just sucked because there were so many storms and the water quality was so bad out front. I'd have like 3 or 4 sessions in a whole month, which that's unheard of for me. I go a lot. So finally, this month I think I got 6 sessions or so far, which is not too bad. Trying to get back on the horse and get some water time logged back in. Anyhow, hello, whoever's here. You guys anybody's got any questions? Toss it into the feed. I have a few topics I wanted to kind of touch on this week, and if you've seen some of the posts I've done today, you kind of know what I'm going to go over. And through the last series of Boog Chats have been mostly my personal Ronin boards. Actually, I started with like my at the beginning of my tubes quiver, and then went through all the way through that, and then all the way through all my personal Ronin boards. So if you go back and watch all the Boog Chats, you'll see basically my collection of personal boards that I've actually ridden since darn near day one. But I have some other boards outside of that are other brand boards, and I really haven't ridden them. It's just more collectible boards that I haven't I've over the years people have given me boards, or I've traded for some stuff, but it's great to have some other boards for reference, just, because all I've ever really ridden is tubes or my own personal Ronin boards. So it's nice to put my hands on some other brands boards, and just for reference, if nothing else. I mean, so I think what I've mentioned the last Boog Chat was I was going to go through, try to do them kind of semi in chronological order of like when they were actually built throughout my collection. So, some of the earliest boards really were, built were Morays. So, and I have quite a few Morays in my collection. So basically I'm going to start with some of the early ones, and they're probably early 80s from what I've talked to some people, and they're all pre bottom slick too. So they all have skins on the bottom. You can kind of see. Let's see, there's 1 or 2 right behind me here. So we'll just get into a couple of these. I'd say this, I don't know exactly. I want to say it's mid to early 80s. This is a Moray 137. You can see here, it's a Moray Boogie 137. It's got bolt-on fins. It's pretty interesting. The construction of how this works is that there's no bottom slick on it. It just has a regular skin on the bottom. And it's pretty interesting how the skin rolls over the rail right here. Like the rail piece isn't a separate piece; it's actually part of the decks or the bottom, and it rolls over the rail. But and if you look in here, there also actually is a pinstripe in here too, there's a pretty interesting construction on this one. I think just because it has a double rail, but the bottom it rolls over this way, which you could probably never really do with modern bottom slick. It just probably is not going to make this roll. So modern construction, this thing with the bottom slick gets cut off, and then you put 2 rail pieces on, and then top side it is kind of like a traditional board. How we still make them today is that you roll the deck skin over the tine here, and rolls over the tail and rolls over the nose. But this is a pretty cool board. Obviously, it doesn't have any stringer. If I was to ever ride this thing, I'd probably crease and probably break it in one session, just because of how much flex is in this thing. It's just stupid. But it's a really cool design, as far as how the bottom skin rolls over, and it's all pre-bottom slick, Surlyn or HDPE bottom slick. So this is a pretty cool one, and like I said, bolt-on fins, we're doing fins these days quite a bit different. It's got the color. It's got some color lines in here too. You can kind of see, which is pretty rare in a moray board. So this is pretty cool moray board. So yeah, that one's good. And then I have another one that's a little bit. I think this one's a little bit newer than that one, maybe by a couple years, but it's still kind of the same construction. Only thing is it doesn't have that secondary inner rail on here, but everything else about how this one's built is pretty much the same, other than it has a moray boogie fins, bolt-on fins on this one, and it's only a 2-plugger versus the other one that I just showed you has 4 plugs. Hey Angler, I'll get to that question in just a second. I see it over there, so I'll get that in just a second. As soon as I get through a couple of these my personal boards, I'll definitely get onto that question. So yeah, this one's very similar, where the bottom skin, it doesn't have slick, it rolls over this way. Other than that, it's very similar to the other one. It doesn't have it's not a number, but it definitely is stamped moray on here. So I'm not really sure what number this is or what generation it is, but it's still in fairly good shape. This board I found sitting by the dumpster down the street from my house. It was just sitting next to the dumpster. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I just grabbed it and added it to the collection. So yeah, that's a pretty cool board. So let me just get at those questions here real quick, Angler. So Angler's asking, where do I think my boards compare with the large box brands like versus NMD and Science? Well, those 3 brands that you just mentioned are all built out of the Mez factory in Indonesia. So, Mez, if you watch some of the previous Boog Chats, Mez had a huge influence on how I build boards. So, obviously he uses a little bit different core because he's in a different part of the world. He's probably not buying USA made PP core. But besides that, as far as the materials go, we use the same bottom slicks and we use a lot of the same skins. So I'd say as far as the materials go, they're pretty similar with like what you look at the outside. They're very similar as far as that goes. And Mez had a huge influence on me as far as channels and things go. The first long multi-channel board I ever saw was a Mez quad. So that had a huge impact on me. Seeing modern. I was writing a lot of single concaves on if you go back through some of the Boog Chats, you can see some of my early tubes boards. They're all single concaves, so Mez showed me one of the quad ones, and I was just like, holy cow, this is really cool. But the concept of that is you just put ribs throughout a single concave and you create a multi-channel system. So I've just taken that and gone crazy with it. If you've seen some of the boards I've built. So as far as I think what's cool about different boards being made in different places and by different people is you get variations of stuff. The 3 brands that you'd mentioned there, Angler, they're all built in the same. They're all built out of the same factory, the same materials, same hands, same. Everything's the same about those boards, but they have different deck stamps. Maybe some different dimensions and different stamps, but all the 3 of those boards are built the same place by the same hands, the same materials. You can't really expect those boards to be a whole lot different on how one brand rides versus another brand. So that's what's cool about you got other shapers in other parts of the world that might do things a little bit differently. And what's better? I don't know if there's better. It's just different, right? So there is no better. There's just different. So one board might be better for how you ride versus somebody else. Somebody else might need a different brand that works better for them. But you can't really expect an NMD or a Science or a Hub or any of those to really be a whole lot different from each other because they're all built in the same factory. But I'd like to think that my boards are as good as any of those as far as quality goes and build. And obviously the things that I do, I'd like to think that my channel systems and the details I put in my board are a little bit above a lot what a lot of people out there are putting in the boards as far as details go. So, and the fact that you can take and those big box brands, they're building boards for the masses. They're not building boards for the individual. And I've gone into that on previous Boog Chats where I've talked about them. There's, they build huge batches of boards, and then they try to sell those all off to whoever wants to buy them. They build those boards for the masses, and they need to be conservative with those because they need to move, 100 of this model or 500 of that model, and they have to sell them all to get their money back. Versus me, I go one at a time. I work directly with a customer, and I work out what details they want in their board. And what's cool is you can mash up all these different ideas. You can pull a tail from here and dimensions from there and colors from over here and stamps from over there, and you can really create something that's very individual for the rider and how you ride. That's the difference between what I offer, the service I offer, versus the boards that they make, all those big box boards. It's just a different take on a business, and there's nothing wrong with how they do it. I think the bodyboard industry needs that kind of thing, but there's also what I do, and it's more of a little niche market. And I look at the bodyboard pie, and I've talked about this a little bit. It's like the big majority of it is the masses, but then there's that small slice of pie that there's the guy who wants something super cool, unique, and custom, and he's an experienced rider, and he knows what he wants, but he just can't really find it. So they'll come to me, and they'll have me build stuff, which that's I am my own customer. I really don't want to ride stock boards. I have very specific needs in the boards that I personally want to ride, and I can't find a stock board that has all those details. So I got to make it, or I have to have it made custom. So that's the difference of the approach between my brand and my boards versus some of the other brands that are out there. Also, do I think that the materials better back in the day, or polypro has improved over the? I think the polypro has gotten a little bit better. I mean, it's hit and miss, man. Every time I order a batch of core, I'm always crossing my fingers that it's going to show up and it's good quality. All of my PP cores all made here in the United States, where I know some of the other brands that are in other parts of the world, they don't use the same PP core that I use that's made here in the United States. So that's the difference between the core. As far as the skins go, I use some American-made skins, and I use some skins that are made overseas. So, but the American-made skins, those are the same ones that any American shaper, there's basically just 3 of us these days, but everybody in America has used those same skins, those 5 basic colors: black, white, yellow, blue, and red. Those 5 colors are come in big rolls, and we can get them domestically here, and I think they're a little bit superior as far as durability goes. Now the skins that all the cool specialty colors that I have and offer, those all come from overseas, and people love their colors, so I got to have that stuff. And they're good skins, don't get me wrong, but they're about a 1/16 of an inch thinner than the stuff that's made here in the United States. I just think it's cool to have the cool colors, but I like the American-made skins for their durability. As far as bottom slicks go, I mean, we're still using the same blend of Surlyn or HDPE that's been around forever. So I don't think there's been any change in the quality of bottom slicks. Yeah, Angler. I don't think people realize, that how many brands come out of the Mez factory in Indonesia or the Ajit factory in Taiwan. I'd probably say 75% of the boards in the entire world come out of those 2 factories. And I don't think people really realize where their boards being made, or who, just the guy who, the 20 guys who touched your board throughout the process. That's another thing, is that those big factories are all set up like an assembly line. And there's guys that just know their step, and they know their step really well, because they have crazy repetition in that. So they're really good. I mean, that's why the quality of those boards are kind of good, because they got guys that just do that one step, and they do it 100 times in a day, and they get really good at that one step. And then that board goes off to the next person who does the next step. Where the way I do it, I mean, if you send an email to Ronin Bodyboards, I'm the one going to respond to it. I'm the one who's going to talk to you and work out all the details of your board. And I'm the one who's going to sand the core, build the whole board, pack it up, and ship it to you. There's one person that touches your board when you get a Ronin board, and it's me. There's one person you talk to at Ronin, and it's me. Versus when, who knows, the guy who made your board in Indonesia or Taiwan, those people, those guys that are working in the factory, they're good at what they do because of the repetition, like I said, but they don't ride waves. They're not active riders. So the knowledge that I have as being an active rider, that goes directly back into the boards that I build. Just being an active rider gives me a huge advantage in the shaping world, just because I'm actively testing designs that I've evolved my custom board, my personal board. I've only ridden custom boards, the tubes days into the Ronin. So I've really fine-tuned what works for me over the past 20 years, just from board to board. And I have a pretty good idea now about like what I want in a prone board that I ride. Now, you know, what I ride at home versus what I ride in like Hawaii when I go to Hawaii is a different setup for sure. Dimensions are similar, but there are some other things with stiffness and reinforcement that I like when I go to Hawaii, just because it's heavier and it's warmer water. And at home here in Morro Bay, the water's usually in the 50s, so it's a whole different game. And I've gone into some of that stuff in the previous book chats. If you guys ever have any chance to go back and look at any of that stuff, it's pretty cool to go back, and there's tons of knowledge and stuff that I've shared over all these things. So, thanks, Angler. Yeah, I appreciate the questions, and thanks for the kind words about my boards, man. I put my heart and soul into this business, and I love it. And I've sacrificed a lot, and I continue to sacrifice a lot professionally, just to run this business. I mean, I have, you know, like I said, I have a degree in architecture, and I've done house plans and wood and construction and all kinds of stuff for years. And I don't really make as much money building boogie boards or body boards, but as what I did with my other businesses before I started Ronin. But I just love this. I have a passion for it, and I can wake up and do it every single day and not burn out. It's just so crazy. I just love building boards. I could just do it every single day. So yeah. Now I guess we'll get into a couple more mores, and then we'll get into some of the other topics I wanted to. If anybody, like I said, if anybody has got any more questions or comments, just throw them in the feed, and I'll get to them when I can. So, you know, come on. If you're a bodyboard builder or a rider or whatever, you got to have a Mach 7.7 in your quiver. So, you know, I was lucky enough to get this. I'm not sure exactly. It's super early Mach 7.7. It's got the Life's a Beach sticker and the Bad Boy sticker on it. But it's got the embossed logo stamp that's not colored. So I know it's an early on Mach 7.7. Single rail, you know, it's typical colors, but I don't think there's a stringer in this either. It's pretty flexy. What blew me away about this board when I first got it was if you look at this tail, what's crazy is that the clip on this side's about an inch smaller than the clip on this side. Like whoever cut this tail really wasn't paying attention to what they were doing. I realized that these boards were mass produced either in the Mexico factory or the Southern California Moray factory. So they're cranking these things out by the hundreds. So I'm sure they weren't really paying attention to a lot of the details, but quite a big difference in the clips on these two. So yeah, this is a pretty cool board. You know, it's kind of cool to be able to have the template and the dimensions from a really classic Mach 7.7. I know all the plug Nazis out there are probably going to be like, oh gosh, look at that plug in the bottom end. You got one up in the front. So yeah, it's whoever had this before me. Actually, you know how I got this one was I'm down. I can just walk to the beach from my place here in Morro Bay, and this lady and guy were walking past me a couple weekends in a row down there where I was walking down to check the surf, and the guy had this board that was walking by me like 3 or 4 times, and I was like, finally, I just stopped him. I'm like, hey man, I want to trade you a brand new board for that Mach 7.7 because I didn't have one of these in my collection, and I really want. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, man, I knew it was an old one, and so I just offered to make him a brand new Ronin for this board. So what was pretty crazy is that I sure enough he was super excited. He was like, cool, that's so cool. You want to make me another make me a board and trade me for this old Moray that just is pretty beat up. You know, it's got crazy deck damage and deck cancer all on the edge, but. So I made him. He came by the shop. It was just up the hill from the beach, and him and his wife came up, and I worked out the details for the first board. I made that for him, and then what happened was the wife loved the board so much that she kept it, and then he was like, man, now she's got a really nice board, and what he did was he can come back and order a full custom from me. So just trading one board led into another order, a custom order, because they both wanted a brand new board from me, which is really cool, and then fast forward, I think they started going with one of their other friends, started going out and boogie boarding with them a little bit. And then the lady that was riding with them saw their boards and was like, oh my gosh, I got to get one of those. So it turned into another board order. And then since then, those original 2 people have ordered 2 more boards down the line. So just by trading for this one board, I got like 4 custom orders just by trading this for this one Mach 7.7. So it worked out pretty well for me, and I have a pretty cool board in my collection. So yeah, that was a pretty good one. Now, fast forward a little bit, I know. So this one, obviously, I don't know if anybody out there knows the Mach 7X. So this is a pretty interesting and unique board. I had a buddy of mine that saw this at a thrift store locally or something, and he's like, "Hey man, I just saw a pretty unique looking moray. Are you interested in it?" But Mach 7S it's pretty cool because it has the old school moray sticker on the nose, and if you look close, it has an early version of mesh too, so you can kind of see it's got a mesh bottom on this thing, which is really cool. But what's really cool about this board is that it has an early version of these crazy retractable fins. So if you look at these things, and I think back in the day before they were spring loaded somehow, but these things, like, you can see they slide out of the board, which is pretty unique. I don't think I know that there's other people out there that have this, but I think it's a pretty crazy, cool, unique kind of system. But I don't know. I can see that I don't know if you can see, but there's a little spring in here. So I think that somehow they used to be kind of spring loaded, or they locked off or something, but I don't know. It's a pretty interesting, it's really heavy too. It's PE core, just has a single rail on it too. I don't know. I bet you this thing does have, there might have been, this one is a little bit stiffer, so I don't know whether it's just the mesh or there might be a stringer in it. But this one, it's a pretty cool, unique board, as far as skegs go and how they retract out. Yeah, I think that the clips on this one are way better than the last one I showed you too. So anyway, that's just a couple of my a few of the morays that I have in my collection, and I'll get through a few more of those down. Maybe the next Boog Chat I'll start pulling out a few other ones. There's a couple other morays, but then I have some turbos and a few other boards that I want to share with some people, but that'll be for another Boog Chat. So those are the ones I kind of wanted to show today, just those 4. If anybody has any questions, fire away, or comments or whatever. I mean, it really is helpful to kind of get some questions. But so, maybe we'll get into the next topic that I had. So I made boards for a few boards for this guy that he's in New Hampshire, a guy named Jonathan, and he has a couple prone boards and a tombstone, and so he's got I've made quite a few boards for him already, but I guess he was getting into some surf mats, and if you know the guys prone ride on these things, and they're like inflatable mats that guys ride on waves. So if you guys know what that is, and I guess there's some people out there that make custom surf mats as well. So there's some kind of maybe some higher end ones that you can kind of get out there. And so Jonathan was getting into a surf mat or two outside of the boards that I'd made him. But he came to me with a pretty interesting request. He's like, hey man, I got this wild idea that, do you think you'd be able to make to mash up the shape and the concept of a mat, a surf mat, and a boogie board, and mix the two? And I was like, holy cow, I never even really thought about that. And obviously, it's kind of a novelty thing, but I'm like, man, it's outside the box, and I'm kind of all about exploring ideas like that. And I what if, I always say I don't like what ifs, but because I want to know what it's all about and how it rides. So I was like, well, let's give it a go. What for starters, what kind of basic specs did he want in the board? And he had just ordered a custom surf mat from one of the manufacturers of custom surf mats. So he had dimensions and kind of sizes that he kind of fed to me about just width and length. But he didn't really give me any nose or tail dimensions. But come on, if you look at surf mats, they're really rectangular in shape. There might be a little bit around to the nose and the rounded nose corners and whatnot. But and obviously they're kind of ribbed a little bit on the deck and the bottom, just because of the nature of how they make those things. But and then the rails are very rounded off, and you might have little rounded corners up on the nose. So I wanted to kind of take that basic shape of a mat and then try to make a bodyboard similar to that. And the other thing about the mats is they're really thick. So, I think they're pushing 3 inches thick on some of the mats. So, and I do stock occasionally. I stock some 3-inch polypro core too. So I had one piece left, and I hit up Jonathan. I'm like, okay, man, I got one piece of 3-inch core left until I order some more. And I'm like, okay, let's try to figure this thing out. Jim, good to see you, buddy. The Boog Mat Chat, nice. Yeah, well, I'm just kind of getting into all the Boog Chat, so yeah, or the Matboog Chat. So and so the concept of this thing was, obviously it needed to be kind of real straight railed and square nose, square tail, like really straight. So Jonathan wanted a 41 inch. He gave me I think it was a 21 inch width, and then so I was like, okay. From the nose to the wide point, like normally, you got a 12-inch nose to a 21-inch wide point to a 17, 18-inch tail. That's kind of basic numbers for a regular prone boogie board. So, but then I have my tombstones that have really wide tails, even though they have a standard width, but they have really wide tails. So there's not a lot of variation between the wide point and the tail. They're really straight throughout from the wide point to the tail, because there's not a huge difference in those numbers. The smaller the tail gets, the more it pulls in and gets more teardrop shape. But obviously the mat needed to be really straight and rectangular. So I went with, he's like, okay, well, I want to have like your traditional contours, like what you put on my his normal prone boards. But then he's like, I want a long multi-channel is what I suggested. And he's like, well, I still want a scallop tail on the top, but maybe a square tail on the bottom. And I'm like, okay, well, and then he started sending me some pictures of some boards of the mat, some examples of the mats. And I saw the noses on them, and I realized they were kind of rounded around the nose corners. And then they had a little bit of radius to the actual nose. So all these details I kind of wanted to put into the board. And since the mats also have very round rails, I wanted to kind of make it a rounded rail type, Ben Severson, rounded one-piece rail type of situation. So anyhow, I got at it, and I guess this is it right here. So if you can see it, there's the nose of the board. It has my normal contours that I normally do on most of my prone boards, but obviously it's real wide. And then as far as the tail goes, it's a kind of a 3 scallop into a square. So like I said, I don't really think I've ever even seen a bodyboard that's kind of even like in this kind of shape. Look, I mean, if you can see it, this is the shape right here. And then, having just a little bit of radius to the nose and having it round off. And then, like I said, it's also a rounded one-piece rail all the way through all this. And it's a true 50-50 rail. As far as the rail angles go, that's something different about this board than like all the other boards I build. There's one angle that I usually cut the rail angle at, and there's another angle I usually cut the chine at. And the chine angle is usually laid back into the board just a little bit more than angled than this is. So, but on this board, because I wanted a real true 50-50 rounded rail, this angle and this angle are exactly the same on this board, which it really feels good in your hand. But other than this thing is god awful thick, man. It was just crazy. I actually rode this board yesterday. I took it out yesterday. And so as far as the bottom goes, it's a full 5-channel. The 5 channels go all the way up to where the nose cut starts. So this board's like fully channeled out all the way up into where like the nose starts. So it's quite an interesting ride. So I took it out yesterday morning, and it's probably like 2 to 3 foot out front. It wasn't very big, and it was super foggy, which was nice because people didn't have to see what I was doing out there. I'm sure people were, if it would have been a nice sunny day, people would have been looking at this thing going, what the hell is that guy riding? But it was kind of nice being out there in the fog and no one could see what I was doing and kind of kooking around on this thing. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, and obviously because it's so thick and it's so buoyant, I've never ridden a board quite this thick before ever. I have one of my early tombstones is really big, and it's like 2 3/8 thick, but this is full 3-inch thick. I mean, like, it's so weird. Like, you just holding on to the rail, it's like you really gotta it's a lot of rail to hold on to. I found myself like flat palming it a lot when I was riding it instead of wrapping my fingers over the rails. And whenever you're dropping your rail down your hand, I was almost flat palming it a few times. The thing is that because it's so buoyant and there's so much float to it, it paddles. It was paddling super fast, like it was crazy fast paddling, and it also caught waves super easy as well. So it's definitely an interesting ride. Obviously, you had to kind of muscle any kind of turns. You really had to muscle it because as you can see, there's hardly any curve to this rail. In fact, the wide point's at 21 and the tail's at 20. So it only pulls a half inch off from the wide point to the tail. There's only a half inch of curve in the back half of this rail. The midpoint's just a little bit pushed forward because I knew it was going to be a prone board. I didn't want to go true like right in the middle of the board for the wide point. I kind of pushed it forward just a hair. And what's wild about this is, but before I rounded all these nose corners off, the nose is exactly as wide as the tail. So it has a 21-inch or a 20-inch nose, 21-inch wide point, 20-inch tail. It's just the craziest. I was just laughing my butt off the whole time I was making it. It was such a wacky, cool thing. And anyway, I'm sure it's going to be another thing about like when I made it to the outside and I'm just sitting there. I get sit up on top of the board, and man, it was just like I'd never been that high sitting on a board in the water ever. It was just crazy. It has so much crazy float in it. That was another thing I noticed about it. But like I said, you have to really muscle the turns because there's no curve in the rail. But once you got it pointed in the direction you wanted to go, it went pretty good. And it actually, because most people, I have. And my other tombstone that I have is also a square tail. My old tombstone that I was just talking about. It's a square tail, but it's like a single, double to quad on that board. But it has a square tail. But the channels aren't quite as aggressive as these. Obviously, these ones were longer, but I think I took these ones even deeper into the board. So it tracked and held probably better than I was expecting because most square tails tend to be a little bit loose. When you sit back on the tail, they tend to get a little side slippy because of all these long channels. It really did track and hold its direction pretty good. Way better than I was expecting. I was expecting to be kind of loosey-goosey out there, and it really did okay as far as tracking its direction. So anyway, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting ride for sure. I put nose bulbs on it. You can kind of see out on the corners, but what I did was I found myself, because I'm used to like a 12-inch, 11 3/4, 12-inch nose on my boards. Just I have muscle memory, and my elbows are pretty much riding in the same spot as what I ride on my normal prone board. But I found myself, instead of holding on the outside corner out here, I still felt like I was wanting to grab a little bit more at the normal, like a 12-inch nose position versus way out on the outside corners. I didn't have any problem with the nose corners catching or anything. And that's kind of why I kind of knocked these things off and rounded them off really good. So I figured because obviously it has such a wide nose. I mean, most people are instantly like, oh, those nose corners are going to bite and catch and stuff. And I'm sure they will in certain situations. Like obviously this board, when waves are super pumping, or you might not want to ride this board. You might want to go with something a little more traditional. But if you're looking at a small day where you just want something fun to ride or something like this, I could see this thing being a heck of a lot of fun on the small, just cruisy, 3-4 foot days max. Maybe chest high and under. You're gonna have a great time on this. It's gonna catch everything in sight. Golly, it's not the easiest board to duck dive though. I'd try to punch it down. I could get it down under a little bit, but man, it would just pop up so fast because there's so much volume to this thing. It would just pop me up super fast. It's not the easiest duck diving board, but like I said, you got to give up. It's a trade-off. It's a trade-off for having the extra volume and the paddling speed and the wave catching ability. And the trade-off is not being able to really duck dive it too well. But other than that, it's a pretty cool board, man. And it's super unique. I can't wait to once I get it posted on social media. I can't wait to see all the comments and things because I'm sure people are gonna have a field day with this thing once I post it. But yeah, the Matboog, there it is. So gold, got the golden ducks, gold 5-ring stamp. So yeah, that's the Matboog. Like I said, it'll be interesting to see all the comments from everybody. I'm going to get this thing boxed up tomorrow and shipped off to Jonathan. He's in New Hampshire. So this will be out on the East Coast and the Northeast. Yeah. Can't wait to see, get some feedback from Jonathan once he rides it once or twice and see how he thinks about it too. So only 2 people here. I wish there was more. We need more comments and talks with people, man. It really helps having more people here. And that might be on me just because I'm not doing them as frequently these days as I initially started doing it. And I think that the more often I do these things, that I think the more people will. You got to be really consistent with this type of format, and then people will start showing up. Hey, also, I don't know if anybody's noticed, these are the new 5-ring color 5-ring shirts. Hey, Jim, look at this, buddy. This ought to look familiar. Jim Ledbetter is making comments over there. He's the one that does my screen printing, and he made me these shirts just recently. They're up on the website if anybody wants to pick one up. Yeah, and hit up Jim, man. He has anxious energy. You can hit him up on Instagram, or there's a website, or yeah, he'll screen print up whatever you need. So hit him up. So yeah, Jim's asking about board 500. I guess that's the last thing I maybe want to get into today as far as topics go, and then we can just shoot the stuff the rest of the time. So yeah, 500's coming up. 500's coming up, and I don't really know what I want to do for it. Obviously, it's a board that I'm going to keep for myself just because it's kind of a milestone board, kind of like number 100. So yeah, I have number 100 still. It's never been ridden or plugged or anything. It's kind of one of the just a milestone board I wanted to keep in my personal collection, and it's just one of those numbers that I didn't want to have sell to somebody. 500 is going to be kind of the same way, but I got to figure out what I want to do for 500. I'm still riding board 420, and it's going great for me. So I don't really need another daily rider right now. I have my Tombstone, and I also have a 272, which is my rounded rail orange and black board. It's up on the Instagram, and I've showed it here a few times too. So I have those 3 boards that are kind of still in my rotation of boards I ride. So I have plenty of boards. It's not like I need another one, but I'm going to definitely make something cool for 500. And gosh, I was hoping there'd be more people here to kind of throw out some ideas. As soon as I posted the thing today, somebody had mentioned maybe I make a guy commented through me Instagram, and he said, hey, maybe for 500 you do an asymmetrical board, but one side was for DK and the other side was a prone shape, which is, I never really thought about that, but you'd have to be, obviously it's pretty specific, but it's a pretty interesting concept, just having one rail for prone. Like, okay, I like proning when I go right, but I DK going left. So, and there might be something to that. That's an interesting concept. And I've never built one that obviously I've done asymmetrical boards, but they've usually been all DK style boards. And asymmetrical for DK makes a lot of sense to me. So, but for proning, asymmetrical doesn't make any sense to me. You're gonna ride that board the same way, but obviously if you're proning going right and you're DKing going left, you're gonna want 2 different rail profiles for that. So maybe there is something to it doing an asymmetrical combo board like that. Skittles color board, like just a bunch of random colors you're talking about, Jim? Oh, stand-up Boog. Yeah, I can do stand-up Boog for 500. Yeah, I don't know. It's just the door's wide open. Obviously I can darn near do whatever I want, but I want to make something really cool and unique. I don't know. I'm going to have to kick it around a little bit. I have a few boards to get there. I have every board on order right now up to 500. I just finished about up to 490 right now that I just finished out of the batch. And all the next 10 boards all the way to 500 are already pre-sold. I've just gotten smashed with orders in the last week. So I'm really excited about, having a lot of boards to build in the pipeline. And obviously my board's I'll have 500, 501. My buddy Rio on Maui, who Rio has 200, 300, 400, and he usually sometimes gets the 50s as well. So he gets the zeros and the 50s. So we had talked a couple weeks back, and he's like, I realize you're not going to give me 500, so I want 501 this time. So he has 501. 502 isn't sold yet, but 503 obviously is Jim's board. Jim has all the 3s. He has 3 all the way to 403. He has every single 3 board. Number 3. 103, 203, 303, 403. So now he's going to get 503. 504 is not sold, but 505 has already been requested. So I have a bunch of boards already. There's a couple gaps in the thing, but I'm starting to get to where I'm going to be like at least a month out. If somebody wants a board, it's probably going to take me a month to even get it done now because I have so many boards in the pipeline to build, which is exciting. But it's a little overwhelming too, because there's a lot of boards to build, which is exciting, but it's a lot of work. I don't think people realize, but I love it, man. I really just love waking up and doing this stuff. So it's no big deal to me. Just get in, let the foam fly. So yeah, I don't know. Stand up bug, maybe something. I don't know. I'll still be looking for some suggestions from other people, maybe through social media, about if anybody has any wacky ideas or some cool ideas for board number 500. And obviously, I'll probably still keep it regardless. I doubt I'll sell it. Yeah, Angler. That's how I. I mean, I don't. I'm not a big sponsor. I don't sponsor contests because I'm just a one-man operation that just builds cool, unique custom boards. I'm not like the big boys who are playing the high-end game. I play a very, low-end game as far as revenue goes compared to some of the bigger brands. I'm not in this to make money. I mean, I'm in it to make money a little bit, but I sacrifice a lot, and I put a lot of energy and time into the boards that I make. And I realize, if I looked at the hourly wage for the profit I make out of one board and how many hours I put into making that board, it's pretty depressing in a way, because I don't really make that much money an hour to work on a board, but I just love the work, and I love stoking people out with really cool designs. So that's what it's all about for me. And over time, really the word of mouth thing has been one of the biggest ways that I've spread the word about my business. Is that somebody will finally commit to ordering a custom from me, and they get into the process with me, and they realize that the service that I offer is not like any other shaper really in the world. I mean, the way that I communicate with people and I keep them in the loop and send pictures constantly throughout the build. People always know what's going on with their board because I'm sending pictures daily. I mean, I send pictures to my customers way more than I post on like Instagram or Facebook or any of that stuff. People that order boards from me definitely are in the loop are part of. I like to think they're part of the process of the board being built, and that only fuels the fire and the stoke for that board for the customer too. I've learned that over time, is that every picture, and then people are just like, oh my God, I can't wait to get it. I can't wait to get it. Oh my God, it's looking so amazing. It really just fuels that stoke to get the board. And, and back in the day when I'd order a custom from Tubes, and, it would be a month, 2 months. I'd walk in there, hey guys, what's going on with my board? I ordered like 2 months ago. Oh, we've been busy. I haven't had a chance to get to it, and they're not going to call me and tell me that. I'd have to walk in there and go, hey guys, what's going on with my board? That's not the situation with when you order a board from me. You're going to know I'm always going to be available if you ever have a question. Once you buy a custom from me, you're going to be part of the process from start to finish, and you're going to know exactly where your board's at. Yeah, Angler. Yeah, Gato has got some really cool, unique designs too. I got a lot of respect for what Gato does. I mean, and he and I actually have a little bit of history, not personally together working, but Gato worked at the Tubes factory for a little while. If nobody really knows that, I think that he actually learned to shape, from what I understand. He had some time working at the Tubes factory, so we have similar backgrounds to where we kind of learn the basic processes of building a board. So I got a lot of respect for what that guy does. He's a little bit further along. He's been doing it longer than me, but I think that his designs and some of the stuff he's doing is very, very comparable to what I do, especially for his high-end custom stuff. I really have a lot of respect for what that guy does. But I think he might have some help in the processes and stuff at his shop. There, he might not be doing every single bit of the steps by himself, although I don't know for sure. I mean, I've talked with him a little bit, but not a lot. But yeah, maybe having some kind of collaboration. But it's just one board, And I don't want to waste. I don't want to have to waste Gato's time trying to figure out what would be cool for me to build for 500. That's not really fair of me to ask and take away his time from his business to try to figure out a cool board that I could build. That's more on me, I mean, I can be inspired by some of the stuff he does, but that's another thing, people sometimes will ask me to build something that's kind of like one of Gato's channel designs. People have asked me in the past, hey, I've seen this, you know, he has like that cool, unique V channel system that he's been doing on a few boards. And a couple people have asked me to build that, and I always say no. I'm like, I could do it, but why would I? You know, that's Gato's thing, and I think, you know, I respect the guy a lot. I don't want to steal his ideas or his designs, and then, I mean, that's him. You go to Gato if you want that channel design. If you want a 3 to 6 channel and a scallop tail, you're going to come to me. You know, even though Gato could probably build it, you know, he doesn't, and maybe he has. But that's cool. I mean, if somebody wants to build one of my designs, I don't get too hung up about it. You know, but I mean, obviously, if like Mez or Agit, we're going to start mass producing some of my designs, I might have to take some issues with that. But I think there's a lot of really cool mutual respect for the pushing the boundaries of stuff, and people stay in their lane with what they do, and they now obviously, you know, I've built some Y-fly tails and you know, obviously some quad channel boards, and you know, those are kind of Mez's thing, but you know, I try, you know, as I'm not mass producing these things, I'm doing one-off cool custom boards in probably a size or a tail configuration that you can't just walk into the store and buy, or you can't just buy like a Mez 41 3/4 inch quad with a, you know, or you know, or a maybe a single to double concave down the middle to a Y-fly tail. You can just, there's certain thing with channel rails and the contours I do. There might be some ideas you could mash up that it wouldn't be like anything you could buy a stocky that Mez makes. So I like to think that Mez isn't too upset with me building a Y-fly tail and a quad channel bottom. I mean, he's had massive influence on me, and I respect him a ton. So I don't want to piss anybody off, and I hope people do the same for me and respect my designs and my ideas. And you know, they build their stuff, I build my stuff, and we stay in our own lanes. Yeah, so I'm just reading through some of the comments over here. Yeah, Jim, I can't wait to visit you in Texas. I heard there, obviously the Waco pool, we've been talking about that for a year or two now. I got to get down there. It's going to happen in the next year. It's got to happen before the end of this year. I really want to get down and visit you, Jim, get some pool time. I've never ridden a wave in a pool, so I want to check that box. I think Waco's pretty cool. I heard there's a surf lake's going to be going in like Austin or something too. Somebody was telling me, which is the surf lakes thing. Technology is pretty interesting to me too. But yeah, I'd love to ride a wave in a pool one day for sure. That'd be awesome. Jesus Walk. What about a bodyboard with epoxy rails or slick? I built a slick rail board, and I rode it a few times and passed it down the line. The problem with the slick rails is they're really delicate, so you got to be really, really careful with those slick rail boards because they want to delaminate real easy, and you know, they're fragile. They're cool. Now, and as far as epoxy rails go, I don't know. You got to be really careful with epoxy and some of the bodyboard foams because they don't really mesh too well together. You can have, because a lot of the epoxies get really hot and it doesn't. There's a, you know, heat and foam don't work well together because it just degrades the foam really quickly. You can like throw a heat gun on a piece of foam and you just melt it to nothing in no time. So you got to be really careful with the type of epoxies you use and the polypropylene foams and then the PE foams. So, but I don't know. I liked it. I mean, it's interesting concept, but yeah, I don't know that I don't really want to experiment with too much of the epoxy or slick rails anymore. I really want to kind of just do what I'm doing now. I really am a fan of the channeled rails, you know, that I do. I mean, I put channeled rails on most of my personal prone boards. I just think it's a great bite, in the back half of the rail. It really bites and holds into the wave face way better than just a traditional flat rail. Having a concave to the rail, it really does bite and hold. I think there's one back here. Yeah, this is one I just finished. This one's going to Maui. But you can see this one has a little bit of a channel to the rails as well. It's not like a flat rail. But what this does is it really has a really hard point here, and it really bites really nice into the wave face. I'm a really big fan. So, I mean, you have a traditional rail to the front, but as it gets back here, you can see it starts channeling out through the back half of the rail. So Yeah, yeah. I have a lot of boards on Maui, Jesus. I love it there. I've been to Maui a couple times. I'm going to be in Maui this summer too. So I'll be visiting Maui this summer, and I'll be doing my Maui my mule program that I always do too, where I throw it out on social media where I'll bring boards with me. If people want to get a custom order and then they don't have to pay for shipping, I can just throw up my board bags and I can bring it with me, and you can save $50 to $100 on shipping because it's kind of costly to get a board to the islands these days. But yeah, I can take. I usually bring one board for me, and I have room for 6 more boards to bring. So I can usually bring 6 boards with me, and I usually get all those pre-sold before I even go. So yeah, I'd love to get I've never been to the Big Island. I've been to Oahu numerous times, and Maui probably like 4 times. So, but I've never been to the Big Island. I've never been to Kauai. They're both on my bucket list, and I will do that. I'll definitely come into the Big Island for sure. I know I have a few boards on the Big Island, and I definitely have a few guys that would just be stoked if I showed up on the Big Island. I want to. I definitely will make it to the Big Island and Kauai. I really want to visit Kauai as well. But yeah, I got a lot of guys on Maui riding my boards. So this one's going to Maui, and this DK board is also going to Maui. I just finished this one as well. So it's DK raised rails. It's got a shin groove, clip crested tail. And it's just kind of straight channels on this one. Not too. I still got to put the plugs in it too. It's going to have the FCS plugs for vector on this too. So 50/50 stamped rails. There's no channel rails. This is standard straight rail on this, but 50/50 rail point. A little bit of nose rocker in this too. You can kind of see there's just a little bit of rocker up in the nose. Yeah, I got quite a few boards on Maui. I love it. Love Maui. It's a beautiful place. I have spent a lot of time on the North Shore of Oahu as well. So, gosh, I didn't get to go to Hawaii. I didn't get to get. It's the first, besides COVID year. This year is the first year I didn't winter. I didn't go to Hawaii in like the last 10 years. I've been going to Hawaii every year for 10 years, besides the COVID year and then this year. But I'm going to go midsummer to Maui, and I still would love to get to Oahu before the end of this year. So we'll see what happens. Angler, he's asking about using more recycled cores like the wetsuit industry. I know there's Gato in Portugal. He's got a resource somehow for some recycled core. I've seen him. He's done a few boards that have a stamp on it that say like it has the recycled symbol, and he has some recycled core. And I've asked my core supplier, but where I get my core, but I there's nothing really recycled. A good recycled foam that's available to me. That's a polypro proper polypro recycled polypro. I mean, obviously PE is another option for cores, but you got to be real. For me, I try to just make polypro boards. I think it's a superior core than some of the PE cores. And I've done some other Boog Chats about those 2 different types of cores and then some of the properties. So you can go back and watch some of the other stuff. And I broke out like samples of cores and showed flexes with how the actual core pieces flex and how they recoil and whatnot. So you should go back and watch some of that stuff if you want to look about cores. Jesus, you're asking, I've never been to the wedge. How does that stack up to Hawaii and the Hawaii waves and power? Well, I don't live in Southern California, and I've never even ridden at the wedge. I mean, if you look at California, you got San Francisco and you got LA. I'm like right in the middle of between those 2 places, right on the coast. Right outside of an area called San Luis Obispo, if you know that area. So I'm right around in this what they call the central coast of California. Paso Robles is over the hill, Tuscadero. There's a few towns around here, but it's north of Santa Barbara and south of Santa Cruz and Big Sur. So I'm in a pretty remote, kind of a remote spot in California. It's not anything like Southern California. It is kind of more of a NorCal vibe here, just because it's more laid back and it's sleepy in Morro Bay. And the water is cold. Now, as far as the power goes, there's nothing that compares to Hawaii. I mean, maybe Tahiti and some of the places in the South Pacific can kind of compare to Hawaii, but there's nothing like Hawaii. There's nothing like the energy and power of Hawaii waves. There's nothing that compares to that. I mean, I mean, we have some pretty good reef breaks and some really deep water sand breaks here that get deep water, and they can get some energy, but it's still, I've never experienced anything like the energy. It's just like a shoulder high wave in Hawaii will hold you down like nothing here. I mean you can get rolled around here for sure. I mean, and then there are days here that are as heavy as anywhere, but consistently with the power in Hawaii, there's nothing like that. I mean, I think everybody, if you're a surfer or a bodyboarder or whatever, I mean, it's a rite of passage to go to Hawaii. I mean, you haven't really experienced surfing until you've been to Hawaii, in my opinion. Now, there's a lot of places I haven't been, but I really think the Mecca is Hawaii. You get a stripe on your arm there. It's sort of the first time you paddle out on the North Shore. It really, you go up in rank. You know, you level up when you go ride there. I always know when I'm in Hawaii for a week on the North Shore, and I'll get around to some spots. I don't ride. I'm not riding big pipeline. I've never ridden at pipeline. I've ridden at the Aikai Sandbar a couple times, and D-Land, and Rocky Point, and Laniakea, and a bunch of spots on the North Shore, and Haleiwa, and Mokalia. And I've been around a bunch of the spots there, but I've never ridden pipeline, just because I respect that place, and I don't think that I should be out there. That's for guys that are like, I respect the locals there, man. I put enough time into and I know my spot in the lineup, and I get scraps, and I got no business being a pipeline. Leave that for the pros and the locals, man. That's their wave, and there's plenty of other options. So yeah, but like I said, there's the difference between Hawaii and here is that when the waves get big here, it's the cold water is a factor, man. That's the big difference between Hawaii and here, is that where I live, the water is so cold. I mean, I wear a hooded 5'4" all year around here. I always wear booties. I'm always wearing a hood, and that element of the cold water, and it's funny because there's been a couple Hawaiian guys that have come and visited me here that it's like the first time they'd ever been to my area of California, and you should have seen their faces the first time when they put their feet in the water here. They're just like, "Oh my God, it's so cold," and that factor it tests your will on a certain level because. Especially if you're not wearing a hood some days, man. You go and duck dive 2 or 3 waves, and all of a sudden you just get what they call like a brain freeze, like an ice cream headache. And I'll tell you what, it feels like somebody hit you in the head with a baseball bat if you're not wearing a hood. And the last thing you want to do is do another duck dive, and it really will test your willpower a lot of the times because it's so cold. And then there's cold offshore winds blowing. Sometimes it can be like 30-degree winds blowing off the hills here. In fact, through this winter, there was snow on some of the hills in the back, and it was offshore right after that storm, and I was out surfing. That wind was so cold. My hands were just freaking so numb. I couldn't feel anything. But, I mean, like I said, it'll test you in a different way. It won't test you with the power, but the cold tests you. Yeah, Jim. Hawaii's definitely another animal, but I really think that. Yeah, but what's really cool about Hawaii is that once you get over there, even on the North Shore, if you know where to go, there are plenty of small wave spots. Like right on the other side of the Haleiwa Harbor, there's the the point there. I'm kind of brain farting, but there's a little cove right there where they run surf schools and whatnot, and that's a great little spot. I mean, there's just uncles on stand-ups and guys out learning on soft tops, and it's a good little spot there. Brain farting on the point, but I've been out there quite a bit. That's kind of my go-to spot when it got like real big out, so it wasn't really. It was a little bit outside my level. Everywhere else, I would always go surfing the little cove there. So awesome. Yeah, I mean, so you don't really always have to. You go to the North Shore. There's plenty of spots to go that are not like they're not pipeline or Sunset. Those spots are. You better know what the hell you're doing. It's not beginner. It's not intermediate. That's legitimate advanced. You better know what you're doing, or you're gonna get hurt, and then you're gonna hurt somebody else, or you're gonna piss the lifeguards off, man. Because the last thing the guys want to do is have to paddle out and save some kook who's out, put himself in a situation that is beyond his level or her level. You gotta like the signs you see everywhere on the North Shore. When in doubt, don't go out. And it'll stick in your head. If you have any doubt in your mind about whether you should be paddling out there, then you should not go. Do not do it, because it's humble. It'll humble you real quick. So yeah. Anyhow, size. Let's see. What are we? Do you have business out there? Size or quantity? Let's see. I don't know what you're asking there, Jesus. So you have to kind of give me a little more info. I don't really know what you're asking there. Got 6 people here. If anybody has any questions, fire away. I know we're hitting about the 7 o'clock hour. So I've been doing this for an hour. And I usually go for an hour. So if anybody has any last little questions, start tossing them in. Otherwise, I'm gonna get on and get some dinner. So let's see. I got, this is another board I'm working on. I posted this just up on I'm doing the vector install on this right now. You can kind of see I just got it's a three plugger on this one. Oh, as far as size quality goes, I'm not much of I like stuff, chest to double overhead if it's okay. Head high and a half is, it has to be it can't be just close out beach breaks and be overhead. I'm not a big where I live. There's no real true shore break. It's a lot of beach break. There's some reef breaks and stuff. A couple point breaks set up so a little bit south of here. I've rode Rincon quite a few times. I've been out at Steamer Lane. I like point break waves really the best, or a reef break that runs a little bit. I love Lani Akea. I've spent a lot of time at Lani's, and on the Himalaya side too. So I've surfed that zone quite a bit on the North Shore. Hey David, good to see you, buddy. Off the wall, yeah. I haven't paddled out it off the wall yet. I would probably go if it was a little bit on the more human side, not superhuman side. Like I said, I'll ride. I always say 2 foot to 10 foot is kind of my zone. And that's Hawaii. That's California size, not Hawaii size. I got no business in Hawaii 10 foot. That's maybe a little bit outside of my comfort level. I like a little bit overhead waves if it's makeable, but I'm not really into shore breaky closeouts. That's not really my thing. Sandies and the wedge. To me, I respect the guys that ride that, and I got guys that ride my boards in those types of waves. But for me personally, I'm not much of a shore break kind of guy. I like makeable waves that give me a little bit longer of a ride. My beach break that I ride right out here all the time, it can be 100, 150 yard paddle out. So, you can catch a 15, 20 second wet ride wave out there. And, on a good day out at my beach break, you can get barreled on the takeoff, and then it'll back off, and then it'll hit the inside sandbars, and you can get barreled. You can get double barrels on the waves that are out front here. But a lot of times it's a slower, softer wave. But I've gotten more barreled out in front than I have anywhere else ever, just because I ride out there so much. But yeah, there's still some zones on Oahu that I still want to get to. Like I've never ridden at Walls. I know there's a lot of guys that I would just be stoked if I showed up at Walls. The next time I get to Oahu, I'm definitely going to spend a day just hanging out at Walls. I've been out at Ala Moana and off of Diamond Head. I've been at a few spots there in town, but let's see. I've been to Peru. I've surfed in Lima, Peru. I've bodyboarded in Lima, Peru. The East Coast as well. So East Coast, West Coast. I haven't been to Mexico. That's another spot that I really would like to check the Mexico box one day. I have a few friends here that live locally that trek down to Baja quite a bit, and I've been close to going with them a couple of times, but I'm gonna do that eventually. I'm just reading comments here. Yeah, I know Spain has some amazing waves, right? Spain and Portugal, and France. gosh, if I ever get to Europe, I'd love to hang out at all those spots are just world class. They're just endless waves from what I've seen. So, I got some boards up in the UK as well, which is that's kind of a zone that's kind of off the radar a little bit, but it has its days there too. That might be somewhere. Yeah, Dave. Meet and greet at the wall. It's gonna happen the next trip to Oahu. That we're gonna get that scheduled. I'm gonna definitely have a Ronin day at Walls. It's gonna be awesome. It'll be a fun day. We'll bring a bunch of t-shirts and stickers and stoke all the groms out. And there's quite a good little group that are always at Walls there, and I just love to. It looks like so much fun just hanging out with all the crew there. I'm really looking forward to the next trip. So, like I said, we got 7 people here. If anybody's got any questions, we're getting into the last couple of minutes. I'm going to be here. So, if anybody has any other questions or comments, fire away. Otherwise, I'm going to probably get on to some dinner. Yeah, Angler. Thanks for all the questions, everybody. I appreciate everybody being here and the support and interest in my boards and all the the feedback and all the support. It really does fuel my fire to keep doing all this stuff. Seeing 7 people show up, even if it's just 7 people here, I'm really happy to see. Started a little slow today, but now we're up to 7 people here, which is awesome. I just wish all 7 would have been here the whole time, or you can get everybody just needs to get their friends in here, and we can really have a cool little environment to ask questions and spread some knowledge about board building and different types of ways and just whatever people want to talk about. I think it's a cool platform to like share some ideas and stuff. Yeah, Dave. I think you're working. I saw you were at the snorkel shop or something there in Oahu. Yeah, so that's cool. Pop my head in there. Oh, what's for dinner? I think I got some. I'm gonna make a salmon and avocado salad. I think tonight. I think is my plan. Yeah. So, salmon avocado salad is gonna be my dinner tonight. I think. Yeah, Fatima. I'm going to start doing them on Sundays. I think it's a little bit better. A better day. I think more people have. I was doing them on Friday nights initially, and I noticed that a lot of people just couldn't make it because it was a Friday night. But I think Sunday night, especially now that American football's done, Sunday night's kind of a good night. I think for maybe we'll get a few more people here. I switched it a few chats back. I switched from Friday to Sunday. So yeah, I think it's gonna for now. I'll just be doing them on Sundays. And, I might try one. Maybe the next one I might do like earlier in the day on Sunday because I know there's like some guys in Europe and there's another guy in South Africa that would really like to be here and be part of it. But it's so late for all those guys. It's the middle of the night for got people in Europe and South Africa and whatnot. So I might do one like early Sunday, maybe like a noon or something on Sunday. Just one. I'm not every time, but I really like that 6 to 7 o'clock hour for me because it doesn't interrupt my work. I can work all day and then kind of do this in the evenings, which is I don't mind. I don't mind giving up an hour of my time to kind of spread some knowledge and meet and talk with people. It's really cool to meet with people like this and talk with them and take on questions that people. Obviously I'm always available on Instagram if people want or Facebook or through email. You can always ask me questions there, but being an open platform like this where you can just one-on-one ask me questions, I think it's a cool opportunity for people to ask the person who's making their board direct questions. So that's what this is all about. All right. Well, I think I'm probably gonna start signing off now since we're getting anyway. Like I said, thanks a lot for all the support and for everybody being here tonight. I really do appreciate it, and thanks for all the support. And I'll definitely be doing these and more of these in the future. I have more of my personal collectible boards that are not Ronins that I'm going to be doing in the next one. Like I said, I got some stuff I still want to share and some pretty cool unique boards. Some of the turbo stuff and. I have a basic boards from Australia that one of the boards that are really cool board too. So I'll be busting all those out in the future one. So everybody stay posted on all that, and I'll put it out when I'm going to do. I don't know if it'll be next week, maybe every other week or something. I'm going to be doing these, not every week, but like I said, I appreciate everybody being here. I'm going to say bye for now, ciao for now, and everybody take care and thanks for being here. See you next time.